It's time for the View in Your Mirror podcast. I'm Katie Harms, and along with Lisa Rubin, we help you check in and curate the best possible you and the best view in your mirror. We share tips, tricks, and strategies from our 35 plus years in our respective industries. We talk about your day from morning to night and everything in between. We share our uniqueness, relish in our shared experiences. Along the way, we share conversation with fabulous people who give us their own thought-provoking insights. So come along as we help you hone the best view in your mirror. Lisa.
Good morning, Katie.
Lisa, turn that frown upside down. It has been a day. It has been a day.
Yes, it's been quite the morning for me. I've had to be very flexible on all different accounts.
And we know that's your strong suit, right?
Yes, that's my strong suit. Yeah.
Here's the deal. We're going to talk about distractions. I want to talk about distractions in wardrobing. And what better way to start talking about distractions than a day that has been filled with distractions, and it is 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's been quite a day already. And you know, I think everybody has these days, right? They come and they go, and it's really what you make of this. I think one of the reasons why you're so good at dealing with distractions such as this is that you are pretty organized, right?
I know, but part of my day was me not being organized and something happening to me that doesn't ever happen to me, which is I left my business notebook that has my entire business life in it at a new client's house that I was at yesterday. But I didn't know that until I completely turned my house upside down and my car to find that it wasn't there. This morning at 6:45 this morning, yes.
Was this before or after finding out you had no internet at your house?
This was right after. Yes. No internet or electricity. Yes. Yeah.
Well, look at you. Look at you charging on. Because really, what do you have?
So then I had to, I figured it out. I contacted the client. I had to go back to her house. And here we are, Katie. But let's make it perfectly clear. I'm at your house this time. The last time we recorded, we were at my house because you had no internet. Now I am at your house. We are recording separately in different rooms, but yes.
We're making it work.
So here we are.
And the distractions that we have here is that I have a daughter and her family living with us while they go through a remodel, and she is also working from home. So we got a lot of good energy. We got a lot of good work energy, get crap done energy in this house. So that's how we are. So we got a lot of distractions we're working on. So let's switch it to talking about distractions in wardrobing. I was reading something the other day about people should be allowed to express their personality in their clothing and so on and so forth. And we were having a conversation about this, and you are hired to go into businesses and talk about wardrobing and suiting and whatnot. And so certainly a business has to have some direction that they like to give, but I think we're past the point of the world where you can have strong, defined uniforms unless you truly have a uniform, right? So I don't think companies can say you can do this, you can't do this. They have to be very careful, right? But let's talk about it from the other side. If a company is very open to what they allow people to wear or what is considered accepted, because the allow word is kind of, I think, tough in that wardrobing space. But does it offer distractions to good business principles?
200%. And that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time on, especially if I have a new client or if I'm going into a corporation and talking about this, because people don't realize it until I say something, right? So a few of the ones that I do touch on all the time are, number one, cleavage. Let's start with the boobs. We always start with the boobs, Katie.
We always start with the boobs.
But
we like the girls. We really do.
There's nothing wrong with the girls, but depending on where you're going, especially on a Zoom call, like pay attention because where your screen is on your computer, and if you do have, larger breasts, and if you don't have a bra and you're wearing a sports bra, which is like someone not brushing their teeth for me. I mean,
But
you
there isn't
know,
cleavage in a sports bra, so unless they're
no,
taking
but
care of that,
all of
right?
these, there can be, if you're wearing a t-shirt that's a V-neck and you
Mm.
have a sports bra on and they're smushing the girls together, what do
Uh,
you see? You see a huge cleavage. So I just like people to pay attention to that and be aware of it because it's a distraction. And so if you're trying to get points across and you're trying to make decisions, especially if there are men and women on the screen or in the room, eliminate the distraction and think
I think we
about
have
the
to be, I
shirt you're
think,
going to wear.
I think we have to be honest, right? Because is this a woman problem? Not necessarily. But again, we're talking about eliminating distractions. So why even have the conversation about it? Should we be able to say we can wear what we want? Men should keep their thoughts to, right? But it's still there. We're still living in a world primarily dominated by a certain sect of the population or a certain sex of the population in a space where this is a real concern.
And let me also add that the people that are making the big decisions are people that have been around for a long time, and their thought processes are not going to change completely. So I always talk to people who are just entering the workforce or are going to start going to court or maybe start showing up in a boardroom. They have to mirror the people that are in the room.
Mm-hmm.
You might not like it. You might not like what I have to say. But if you want your voice to be heard or you want what you're going to present to them to be listened to, mirror what is in the room.
Or dress for the position you want.
Or dress for the position you want. Exactly. I
Different
mean,
way.
look at your boss and see how your boss is dressed.
Right.
That goes for men and women.
Yes. And as you're talking about this, you may not like it at the beginning, but first of all, people are not hiring you to hold their hand and pat them on the shoulder and say, "Yeah, you look great." They're looking for you to guide and counsel because that's an important part. They should realize that that's an important part of what they do and their success in business.
Right. But when you walk into a room, the first 20 seconds, people have already summed you up by what you look like, whether
Right.
you like it or not. That is how it works.
And ultimately, when I've talked to people that have gone through this process with you or someone else, they've gotten very comfortable with it because it's always the unknown, right? At the beginning of it. So
Right.
again, we're going back to the distractions. Okay, can we pick on men for a minute? Like we picked on women right away with the boobs. Do men have
Yeah, we
distractions?
can.
How they like,
Yes. I mean, let's talk about the men that walk into a meeting with super tight pants on, or men that walk into a meeting with, especially in the summer, with a khaki or a lighter colored pant and they have black boxer shorts on. And so, again, they should think about that and they should think about how people are going to see them. Do they want that distraction? And I do talk about that with men all the time when I'm helping them. I mean, if you're wearing a black pant or a navy pant, you don't have to think about that. But make sure that they're not really super tight. Or if you like super tight pants, then throw a sport coat over. It's again the word distraction. Okay? You might be comfortable, but other people in the room are not going to be comfortable, and therefore they're not going to listen to what you have to say. Another big one, going back to women, is having their thong underwear show through their pants or their dresses, or having actually underwear show. So don't put on a pair of black underwear if you're going to wear a light colored dress or pant,
and that's men
because
or women.
both,
I suppose
both.
the thong could be men or women too. I mean, you know.
It happened to me yesterday. I had a client come over to my house, actually. She, as they call it, went unapproved shopping. and she wanted me to see her unapproved shoving. So she starts putting all this stuff on for me. And I'm like, well, first of all, those pants are completely see-through and you have black underwear on. So if you're going to keep those pants, remember, do not put black underwear on if you're going to wear the pants. And she looked at me, she goes, oh my God, I would have never thought of that. So
On. Seriously?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So these are just little things that people need to think about. Another one that I do talk about with women in the summer is wearing too sexy of a shoe, a sandal. I don't think a full blown sandal or flip flop is appropriate in a serious meeting, definitely not in the courtroom, definitely not in the boardroom. Or if you're going back to work and you're working in a law firm or an accounting firm, be very careful with that shoe, especially if you're going to have like red toenail polish and a high heeled shoe and an open foot. That's a distraction. And
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how I feel about it too, because there's a part of me like, okay, you're feeling good and whatnot. But I think there's a difference between a chunk heeled sandal that
like
a
a
lot of,
peep toe is great,
right.
or a sandal that comes right across your foot.
Yeah. But
Um,
you're talking strappy, what you would consider you're going to wear with a gown or a cocktail dress.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. To
All
me,
right.
that is not daytime shoes.
Got it.
And also on the flip side is make sure if you are going to wear a sandal that your toenails are cut. If you're not a person that likes pedicures or nail polish, that's fine, but make sure that your feet are well groomed
Mhm.
because that's also a very big distraction.
And you think people don't notice, but they do. Maybe you're not a person who notices these types of things, but I would say characteristically and a
If
high
you're sitting
percentage.
in a room and you're at tables,
Mhm.
and generally a woman will have her legs crossed if she's wearing a skirt, you're going to see your feet. I
Mhm.
talk about this a lot when women sit on panels on a stage and they're going to speak, but yet there's other people on the stage that are also going to speak. Distractions for that. The shoe is a huge distraction. Be very careful what shoe you're going to wear. And I generally have women wearing pants versus a dress because if you're wearing a dress, you're always fidgeting on how that dress is going to lay. And again, that's a distraction to when people are trying to listen to the person on the stage.
I think it's a really clear message that as we're depending on the event or depending on where we're going, just as we start our day, thinking about what our distractions may be. So,
Yeah.
what kind of an environment are we going to be in and what are our distractions going to be? I start out my day, I'm a lot more casual, right? I'm on job sites and things like that. So I make sure for me, I can't wear open-toed shoes on a job site if I'm going out to do measuring or whatnot. And I can be a lot more casual in my wardrobe, but I do think about, okay, where am I going to be and what am I going to wear and what are the elements of what my day looks like so that I'm somewhat put together most of the time
And
for
for
the day.
you, Katie, a good example is you probably think about it and think, oh, I'm not, even though it's a hot, sunny day, you're probably not going to wear a dress if you're going to go be measuring closets, right?
Right, right,
So again, that would be a distraction to
right,
somebody, even in their own home. If you didn't think about that and you're up on a ladder and all of a sudden, you can see what's underneath the dress, right?
right. For
So,
me, I have to always remember I need to wear socks in my tennis shoes when I go into somebody's home because I'm not going to take my tennis shoes. I'm notorious for not wearing socks in my tennis shoes. I actually don't like socks in my tennis shoes, but I have to when I go on a job site or a person's home because I'm not going to walk around their home in bare feet.
yeah, that happened to me yesterday. I feel the same way and I forgot and I did not put socks on. And I
Oh,
was in my bare feet. And that was bothersome to me, actually.
bothersome to both on both sides, probably,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, really, it's all about distractions. And, I think eliminating the distractions. And also, when you get into the habit of thinking about these things, it makes it a lot easier. It makes your wardrobe a little more succinct. It makes how you're making decisions make sense. because it all matters, right? It comes right down to it. You have built a career because this matters. Whether people like to say I'm using a wardrobe consultant or not, they know the importance and the value that you bring to thinking about all these little details.
Yeah, I have a couple more that I just want to say that women don't think about.
You have 1 minute.
Okay. When you put lipstick on before a meeting or a Zoom, or a virtual appointment or Teams, whatever you want to call it, make sure you lick your teeth with your tongue, because if you have a colored lipstick on, it can get all over your teeth. And then you show up for this meeting, and that is a huge distraction of seeing lipstick all over your teeth.
Mhm.
So remember that. It's a very simple thing to do, and get in the habit of doing it.
Mhm.
So that is one thing that I really like to talk about with people that they don't think about.
Yes, and raise your hand if you just licked your teeth when Lisa was talking about licking your teeth when you put your. Okay, what's the last one?
The other thing is eye makeup. If you're going to be wearing eye makeup and our eyes tear and they get kind of goopy, and if you're going to go on a virtual or Teams meeting, make sure you kind of look at yourself first and make sure that you don't have mascara or something in your eyes, or mascara or something hanging down your face, because that's an easy thing to solve, but it is a huge distraction, because when you're doing a virtual or Zoom call, people are only looking at your face and your lips when you're talking.
Yes, and you don't want to really recognize it when you get on that Zoom call with everybody else, because then you're going to be.
Yeah, exactly. You touch your face, then you look into the screen and you don't even subconsciously realize what you're doing,
Right.
and everybody can see what you're doing. So just take a look in the mirror before, or on your phone, before you get on that call.
Fabulous. Thank you. Now, speaking of distractions, I think our next guest probably could tell us a myriad of distractions that she's experienced in her long career in broadcasting and television. And she has dedicated her life to telling people's stories, especially and giving safe space to people's stories. She's the executive producer, host, and chief inspo officer of the Telly Award-winning and Emmy-nominated Whitney Reynolds show. We are so honored to have Whitney Reynolds with us. Whitney, thanks for being here. Whitney Reynolds, we are excited to have you join us. Thanks so much for being here.
I am honored. We were giggling as we started this because we're all talkers. This is going to be a fun podcast today because I just can tell the three of us are going to have a good time breaking down some of these topics.
I think so. Lisa will get her word in. She's a little less of a talker than you and I are. She's a little more cerebral than I am. We'll have to figure out where maybe you two have the cerebral part and I'm in the, we all have those, like that Venn diagram where we all kind of intersect, how we intersect. But either way, we were talking distractions in wardrobing before we came in with you. And I said, you've probably had a few distractions in your life and your big, long career in media and whatnot. Anything you want to share?
Well, if we're going straight to the wardrobe distractions, there's been so many, and I have to say, streamlining it for me is going in and picking out my own style and figuring out what I love, because that's how you're going to feel great on air. So, and that took me a long time. When you're starting out in TV, you think you have to do things the way other people did it. And the way a lot of my friends on TV do it as people pick out stuff for them. And so for me, I finally realized, hey, if I'm going to be point on my brand, I want to pick out what I would really wear. And that goes into how I own my show and now fully owning the wardrobe, which has helped me, just have those 7 outfits for the full season, just right there on the rack, ready to go. But going back to the overall distractions just over the years, I have to say my biggest distraction and biggest beautiful chaos blessing are my twins. They're now 7. So I feel like I'm finally out of the dizzy head going around saying, oh my goodness, when are the diaper changes going to stop? But no, that's probably been my most beautiful distraction when it comes to work, because juggling them And knowing that's my number one goal in life is to be the best mom possible, but then also owning a national TV show that's dedicated to making a positive impact on this world. It's the balancing act.
It's always the balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah, spinning plates is what I call it. And sometimes they crash, and then sometimes they come out crystal clean. And I'm like, wow, what a great week.
Or sometimes when they crash, you learn from it and you think, wow, I never thought I could do it that way.
Right, right.
That's so true. And Lisa, as you found this morning, right? What did you say when you came in here? It's going to be a great day. It's going to be a great day because already you were already turning the energy of the day from something that started out as being a complete and utter distraction.
Yes, very true. Very true. Very true.
Right. And I think you learn, especially when you have kids and, then you get to the point of grandkids. Our oldest grandchild is 7. So I know exactly where you're at with that because I watch it a little differently, right?
Yeah.
And I think it really is just how you handle the distractions that is what's going to keep you vibrant and being able to bounce back, right? If you're not so concrete set in things.
So I got a business mentor 2 years ago, and she has been one of the biggest blessings in my life. For any listeners that know toys, you probably have walked down the toy aisle and seen a logo, Melissa and Doug. She was a toy maker for years, and they recently sold their company, but Melissa Bernstein took me on 2 years ago. And she has been a game changer because one thing she kept saying at the very beginning of becoming my person was, Whitney, focus on the product. And it's so easy in TV to get distracted because there's, the product, is it social media? Nope. But that still reaches millions of people. Is it, emceeing events? No, but that still reaches people. So what's the ultimate product? And I really had to dig deep because I've been doing this 15 years on TV, 12 of those PBS, 3 now actually nationally syndicated. And so it's always been a learning curve with that. But there's so many distractions that can come along the way of like, how do you actually drill down and focus on the product? And I realize that's my TV show, like what I'm putting out there. And that can be like digital recuts, but it still goes down to the product of the TV show. So she's been transformational in like laser focusing on like, how do you elevate that?
And if you can do that, going back to the distractions, then you can always go back to that when there are the distractions.
Absolutely. Yep. That's 100% right.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's drill down to your product, which is the TV show. Take us back. How did it get started?
So I was one of those unique kids that knew from there is not a moment in my life that I don't remember knowing I was going to be on TV. And at the time, I would pretend to be Sally Jessa Raphael. I'm a kid of 86. So I borrowed my mom's big, obnoxious glasses because those were in back in the day. And I would take a tennis ball to an empty paper towel ring and pretend to be a talk show host. And I would do this in my living room. For all of our listeners that I'm 38. So for all of our listeners that are 38 or 35 and older, you probably remember those old things called VHSs and those old cameras that moms would try to pull out at dance recitals. That's like holding a boat over your shoulder. Well, I would have my mom like film me and I would start interviewing people. And what was great is I had this knowing inside me that I would do it. And it's very interesting because I look at my kids. I have boy-girl twins. They are 7. And my daughter now wants to have the Marlo Heiner show. But it was interesting because I watched her first 6 years of life, and my son still wants to be a zookeeper. And they lived normal until now. Now my daughter's very focused. She brought in her video camera today. But it's very interesting because there's not a moment in my life that I don't remember wanting this. But then what's crazy about life is there's different roads and impacts and what I would say dot points that happen to us. Some can be tragic, some can be really beautiful, but those dot points, if we can learn to connect them, are really big moments of really creating this more beautiful, you could say a picture, or your dot points could make a path. But for me, my parents went through a very difficult situation when I was 8. And it was in that moment of trying to figure out our new normal that I still held on to the dream, but it kind of morphed. And it kind of morphed into okay, this is what I want to do on TV, but it was more of this like protective, if I do this on TV, how do you hold being a very public person, which is a big thought for a young kid if you think about it. And then also what you went through. And so I still continued the path of knowing the dream, going after that. I'm really fortunate because I grew up in a tiny town in Oklahoma, and somehow they had a TV program in my high school. So it was really crazy because I got to anchor for our little local high school channel. And our school had this marketing program called DECA. And I got to go to New York and go compete. And it was really cool because I was in New York and I saw this opportunity. And this is another unique point of me is I always look for the opportunity. I've done things a lot backwards than people do. And a lot of those are opportunities that have worked for me. So when I went to New York for DECA, I looked at it as an opportunity of small town, little Oklahoma girl has the opportunity to go to New York. You are going to be the next Katie Couric one day. So you might as well tell her, Whit. So I made my own signs. I'll just send you guys a picture because you'll love this because I wore the most obnoxious cowboy hat, but I tailored it for every morning show. I'm like, okay, I'm there 3 days. So let's hit the Today Show. Let's hit Good Morning America. Let's do it. And so I went to New York and I roomed with one of my best friends, and I'm still all my childhood best friends are still my best friends. I'm going to Scottsdale with them next week and I'm super excited. But one of our friends' moms is really easygoing. And I woke her up at 6 a.m. and I said, hey, I'm going to go to Good Morning America. She handed me a 20. I'm all of 16 years old at the time. And I hopped in a cab by myself, went down to Good Morning America, and ended up getting in and making some connections that opened the door for me after college, or actually mid-college. I worked with some of the people. Eddie, who is still doing floor directing for Good Morning America. He was one of the people I met then. He helped connect me with my people that do my music for the Whitney Reynolds show. The intern that was there letting people in the audience that day actually went to Baylor, told me about Baylor. That's why I ended up going to Baylor. And then I ultimately interned at Good Morning America, and he was there, and Diane Sawyer, who was there, they were still there. And so it was really crazy because that trip and that opportunity really opened up a lot. So my path of getting on TV, it was really dream driven for so long. And I was told, Whitney, you can't be a talk show host. You can't graduate from college with a talk show degree because it just doesn't happen. But there was always this like underlying confidence that somehow it would. And it was kind of this, you don't have this accidentally laid on your heart. So somehow it will create a way. And I still did the traditional TV thing. I did. So Good Morning America internship. This will be funny for the listeners because I love this story, but I was so poor when I lived in New York. And at that time, they didn't pay interns. Emeril Lagasse would come in and cook lamb chop in the morning sometime. And they needed someone to get in the elevator and take it down to the basement so they could clear it. One of my favorite moments is eating the lamb chop as fast as I can before it hits the basement.
Wow.
I gotta eat. Yeah. So, but then I went into traditional news. I was a morning anchor in Market 161, and I learned how to talk on TV. And that really helped me. What I realized too is in the morning show format, you have one relaxed block of news, and that's where you get to interview people. Like you move from the news desk to another set. And I realized I really was having a good time when I was in the cozy chairs and talking to people about deeper stories, not just reading the teleprompter. And so I did that, and then ultimately moved to Chicago. And that's really where the real adventure began.
Okay, well, we have to ask, what was Market 161? Where was that?
Okay, so this is great. So not only could my hometown watch me, it's right outside of Dallas. So I could live in Dallas. I bought a convertible because I had to be in at 2 a.m. because I produced the morning show and anchored it. So I would wake up, I'd wash my hair, and then put the top down in my convertible and drive 30 minutes to work. So it was in Sherman, Texas. And it was so much fun. I think about that time because how often do you get to, right out of school, be able to be in your hometown market? Like that was something very special. And it was also really cool because I got to live in Dallas. So I got to have the best of both worlds. And I always looked at that. I mean, they paid so little at the time. I mean, it was surprised I could live, but I always looked at that as like an advanced graduate degree, that season of life.
Yeah,
I,
we've had some other TV people on too that have talked about just the ridiculous pay and how in the world you can even at that point you're just trying to figure it all out and that you have to put a career on top of it and get to work and yeah.
Well, I remember having to decide, do you get insurance because you can't pay rent? If they take insurance out of your paycheck, there will be no more money left. So, which my parents will not like this, but I paid rent during that season of life. Sorry, mom. What I'm helping. But no, that lasted like only I advanced very fast at that job. And when the opportunity to go to Chicago came, again, it's this underlying confidence and knowing that a way was going to be made. And I talk about this. I got Crane's 40 under 40 last year. And when they were working with me on the article, we were talking about my adventure in Chicago. And when I moved here, the job that I moved here for, there was a thing called the recession, and they closed that position. Well, then it actually got cut. They were like, actually, we don't need an extra reporter. So here I am in Chicago, left what I thought was like a dream job because I was 21, anchoring the news. I graduated from college early, yada, yada. But I was here and I'm like, what in the world am I doing? Like, how do I navigate still being on TV, staying relevant? And in this world of and Chicago has great newscasters. A lot of them are now my friends. My goddad for the kids, he's one of the main anchors here. But being in this market was very like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I sold shoes for a little bit because I had to pay rent again. And nothing's more humbling than learning how to work with people and serving people. Like I wasn't necessarily a waitress, but serving people and putting on shoes on feet. Ugh, 3 shoes, because that was the rule at 9 West. We had to bring out 3 pairs. And it was during that season, though, where I really kind of drilled down on the dream even more. I would see news trucks because one of the 9 West that I would work at was right downtown. And I would go out and I would tell them, hey, I moved here. I did this. I'm 23 years old in this new city and I want to be back on TV again as soon as possible. And it's so funny because a lot of them, as I do my holiday special on WGN and stuff, a lot of them are like, Whitney, I met you 15 years ago at my news truck when you ran outside the shoe store. And I'm like, I know. So it's just my thing here in Chicago was doubling down on myself because there was a thing that had just kind of kicked off called Facebook. And I created an online TV show. And so I thought out of the box because the box wasn't working for me in that moment. The box was a shoe box that I was having to bring to people. And so I thought, how do I get back on TV? And so really the Facebook show was a way to stay relevant. And that's ultimately what launched me into Weekends with Whitney, which was picked up by NBC. And then when I transitioned to back to those dot points of connecting my story and how that impacts where I am, that's when I made the big transition to PBS and became a mission-based show.
Okay. All right.
Wow. First of all, I got goosebumps while you told that story.
Oh.
And the process and how you told us you got there, I absolutely love because you never took no and you always found a different way to do it.
One of my favorite quotes, which I came up with, so my husband would just roll his eyes right now as I say that. But people always say, if you can't go through the door, open the back door, whatever. But I was like climbing and cranking open the darn window, like a dusty window that wasn't supposed to open. I'm like, how do I get this open? And that was so, and it was so untraditional at the time that's what made it work. Like now we live in a day and age, and I'm not trying to say that anybody can be famous, but a lot of people think they're famous because of their phones and the fact they have potentially, some eyeballs that are watching them. But for me, it was connecting the dots on how do I actually become the journalist I know I'm supposed to be, which I call myself a journalist first, always. My talk show, it is a talk format, but I love drilling down to the story. In fact, I had this wonderful person on this season, but I had to ask for more paperwork. And they're like, well, why? We already taped the interview. And I'm like, because I'm a journalist. I need a couple of details more confirmed. And so it's one of those things for me. It made its way. And that's why when I had this moment of being in Chicago and having a show on NBC nonstop, which was it was a channel here in Chicago, I knew that doesn't happen to very many people. Also, Oprah announced her retirement, and it was all during this very unique time. And I thought, this is really your opportunity, Whit. And I was in a city too where I didn't know anybody. And so I had this moment to look inward and say, who am I really? And I was told for so long that what I went through as a kid, keep very separate from your public personality. And I thought, wow, what if I combine the two of those and I create what I needed? And, I say this I did a TED Talk at Wrigley last year, and it's a very interesting place to be now, owning a national TV show and telling people to go there with their story, yet I don't fully go there with mine. And what that really is going back to my journalism. In order to become on my show and in order to make it on the Whitney Reynolds show, you have to get to a certain point of your story where not only did you go through the tough stuff, but you can help our viewers navigate how you got through it and take them along with you. And so for me, in my story, there are multiple authors to it, and it could harm some of them in today's day and age. And I am to a point, which is very, very interesting, where my whole story will probably be coming out very soon because my family is getting to a safe spot. Some people moved and they're in a much better position. And so that's what I've always protected with mine. But I also wanted to make way for other kids that are growing up to know that if they're going through something very difficult, they can still achieve whatever's been laid on their heart. And also their family can get through it. And so that's really the beauty in my story and what made way for my show.
I think you said something, and you said something that really resonated with me is when you determined that you wanted to be mission-based.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that I really think I've heard with necessarily a TV show format. Right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what Lisa and I, without using the word mission, it's our passion. We want to help people. We want to advance people. We want people to feel that they are the most important person in the room. And we want them to have the skills to do that. So we're very aligned in that. But I want you to talk more about that. I want to talk more about the mission-based. We're going to take a quick break. We want to sing the praises of Mira Couture, who I think you know well. And we'll be back to talk a little bit more about mission-based and all things that make you tick. Lisa, you've been working with Mira Couture for quite some time now. What sets them apart in what they do?
They have a complete understanding of the customer, and their goal is to make sure that they're the best version of themselves when they walk out. And the category of bridal and mother of the bride, mother of the groom, and also custom clothing, it's such a tough place to be, and they nail it time and time again because they listen.
When people experience Mira Couture from a custom clothing perspective, what do you find people most surprised about?
That when they put their clothes on, they fit perfectly because they were fit for their body, and they can move, they can travel, they can sit, and they're comfortable the entire time they're wearing their pieces.
Are they surprised about the value?
They are once they receive the pieces and they wear them. Once they get one piece, they get that it was worth the value.
So you might spend a little bit more, but not as much as you would think, right?
Exactly. And the one thing I tell mother of the brides and mother of the grooms is if we have a dress that we're going to make long and you want to be able to cut it off and wear it to other people's weddings as a cocktail dress, all you're paying for then is an alteration to hem it up. So it's like two dresses in one. And you can wear that cocktail dress for 2, 3, 4 different weddings if it's different people. So break that down. But it is so well worth it. It is a magical place. I have been working with them for over 8 years, and I've never been disappointed.
Experience the magic. Go to miracouture.com. I really think the next time that we do a podcast, Lisa, we just have to keep the video running through the break and everything, because there's so many things. I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to talk about that. We got to talk about that. But Whitney, let's get back to the mission-based, because I think that sets the tone for everything you do and who you are.
It's so true. When I was doing weekends with Whitney, which was an around the town show, I jumped out of planes, not my best look because my forehead was mid-scalp and on TV, but that's okay. When I did that, I knew I had the gift to gab. So there's, I think, this component of like understanding your gift, but then also understanding how you combine that with major purpose. And so for me, it was being 23 and having what the world would say was, I don't want to say it all because I was living in a small apartment, but I had like literally the world at my fingertips at that moment because I was in Chicago in a major market and owning my own TV show, which was crazy. And I have a team that was fabulous, and 3 of them are still with me today. So it's very interesting. Yeah. So go ahead.
So you owned your own show, like
From the
there's so
get-go.
much, again. So what does that look like? You go, okay, I want to own my own show. I've got to have
Yeah.
this.
Like me in that
Like,
moment, when I marched into NBC, and part of getting that meeting with NBC was creating that online show and then trying to again pay rent and drive a car and all these things that cost money. So I did real estate videos before they were a big thing on social media and all that kind of stuff. So I did real estate videos. This is back in like 2011. And so before people were really doing it, and I was in a home in the Gold Coast, and this lady who is one of my TV angels said, "You are so cute and you should be on TV." And I said, "Well, actually, I have an online show and you should check it out." And so she checked it out, and then she said, "Hey, you should come down to NBC. They are launching this channel called NBC Nonstop, and I work for NBC, and you should meet with this guy named Matt." So I was struggling at the time, with all the different expenses. And this is one of the reasons why I was on the advisory board for the local Dress for Success for many years, because I was in that moment of how do I have confidence to go into NBC when I don't have a really nice suit that would look good in this moment. And so luckily I lived in a condo building, and I'm a chatty Cathy, and I met a woman in the elevator who ended up being my maid of honor in my wedding, but she let me borrow a suit, and I was able to borrow her suit, and I marched into NBC with oversized heels, and I gave this idea, and he literally said, "I love it, but you got to own it." And I thought to myself, what? And I just went back, and that's when I went to the drawing board. And I'm really glad I didn't know all I know now about TV, because I would have been very discouraged in that. But I was still in that you can do anything superwoman mode, that I just figured it out. But now that I have a national TV show and I still own it, I know how much goes into a back end of having a professional TV show, like even down to like the RGB gamut that has to get approved for national syndication. Like all these things would have been very overwhelming in the time of hearing you have to own it. But I just kind of drilled down and thought, how do I produce a show that can make it to TV? How do I afford closed captioning? How do I afford insurance? And how do I afford a team? And that's really where it all started. And based on the online TV show, I already had some people that were at the time almost like volunteers, but believed in the vision. And that's who ran the race with me. And like I said, 3 of them are still with me today. And we lost my cameraman last year to bladder cancer, and he had been with me for the whole duration of the show as well. And it's just interesting because these people, some people, when they get to where they're going, they say, okay, well, now I'm going to move on and get another crew. And that's never been our case. Like we've all grown with this together.
That's absolutely fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really proud of what we've done. And you can see, and I tell people this all the time, you can Google literally however you want to watch our show. Just put in Whitney Reynolds. You can digest it however you digest, whether it's streaming or TV or whatever. But what's really funny is because I've been doing this so long, you can see 23-year-old Whitney, or you can see 38-year-old Whitney. And my syndication deal is 3 years each season runs. So literally, like, you could have seen, 35-year-old Whitney on TV last week if I'm in reruns. So it's a really funny thing, but you can also like pull up on YouTube, because I've just been doing it so long. You can see all the different haircuts and all the different seasons. Even when I was pregnant, you could see, oh, she didn't give herself any maternity leave because she's back 3 weeks later. So, it's been cool. It's been quite the ride.
So we can see all your different styles as you're trying to figure out.
100%. You can and you can also see where more funding came in, which is huge because people forget. This is why the Cranes 40 under 40 thing was huge for me, because people forget that I own the show, like sponsorships, all that stuff. That is all brought in, and how we stay on air and how we stay rooted in the mission. So it's one of those things of I am a businesswoman too. I do consider myself an entrepreneur just as much as a talk show host, because at the end of the day, I have a team. I have a studio. All these things cost money, and that takes entrepreneurship.
So if you run into somebody very quickly, or if you hold up your coffee cup and you have your mission on that coffee cup, what is the mission?
It is your story matters. And then if I dig deeper with that, it is understanding the dot points that got you to understanding that it does matter. And how do you get to a point where you can share it with others in a safe space and help them navigate their challenges that maybe they're going through and say, hey, here's what I've learned. And that's really when we became the Whitney Reynolds Show, which I crack up because I did not name it the Whitney Reynolds Show. And my husband always says, quit telling that story. But I didn't name it that because I didn't want to be caught in like, oh, she's so into herself, because that's what sometimes when you hear somebody's name in a show, I didn't want it to be about me. It's not about me. It's me helping navigate their challenging story that will guide our viewers to inspiration. So when it was named the Whitney Reynolds Show, I was like, ooh, but now I'm so happy it is, because the brand of the Whitney Reynolds Show. And when I think, like, I get asked all the time now, what is it that you really want in life? What's next? It is exactly what we're doing now, but becoming the household name of hope. So when people hear Whitney Reynolds, they say, I want to watch that because I need my dose of hope. And that's really the goal of the show.
So you're taking people through their tough times and helping them be a better version of themselves when they get out the other side of it.
And not even just that, it's not even like tragic all the time. Like I just interviewed Dan Aykroyd, and he has a story, and his story matters. And he brought laughter, and we talked about navigating, like coming over to the United States and being from Canada and, actually becoming a US citizen while he was here taping a movie. Like all those things, like his story matters too. And like understanding that if we stop and give ourselves a moment with the person across from us, we'll realize we're not that different. We might live majorly different lives. You might be a parent, you might not, but we're not that different if we take the time to get to know each other.
Okay, that is what I say till ad nauseum. Katie is like so sick of hearing that, but like that was the basis for this podcast when we first started. It's like women, we're all the same in so many ways. And it's just understanding and listening to what they need or what you can do to make them the best version of themselves. I mean, that's why I've been doing my business for 40 years.
Love that.
Because that's what gets my blood going, right? And if I can help them, make them be the best version of themselves, of course, it's done with clothing initially, but I end up becoming, I guess, the therapist, because we are all the same. And, I have so many clients that are very high profile clients, but when I get in their house or in a dressing room and they're stripped down naked, we're the same. We have the same needs. We have the same wants. We have the same fears. That imposter syndrome kicks in like crazy. And that's what people need to understand. We're not different.
It's so true. And being vulnerable, that became a hot word a few years ago. But really, what does vulnerability look like to you? And that's what I would challenge you, even the women listening or the men that are tuning in today, that, vulnerability has been a hot word. Like, okay, that doesn't mean necessarily throwing everything out there saying, this is who I am on the bread aisle, but it's understanding that the person across from you has had similar situations that are hard, that they've had to navigate. We could be having a bad day. So how do we lift each other up? And I think that's the beauty of the Whitney Reynolds Show. With the 26 minutes and 45 seconds, I get to do it every week, is delivering that to the nation is what we're after. Giving people that breath of, okay, we might live in opposite states. We might be voting for totally different people, but I am finding commonality in the struggle and the inspiration in your moment.
And
absolutely.
No time do we need that more than now, and just what's going on in the world, of finding those commonalities and how to navigate through them.
Well, and that's what was funny too, is I was told that the show wasn't, and I'm doing bunny ears, so for people listening, they might not see it, but sexy enough when I pitched the treatment originally to become the Whitney Reynolds show because it was all about hope. And it's very ironic because for 7 seasons on PBS, I shook every program director's hand that said yes to us. So we were only in 6 markets for the first 7 years. And it was such I wanted national so bad. I wanted it. And it was interesting because going back to that whole, it wasn't sexy enough, COVID happened. And guess who got the call that people needed hope more than ever? And guess who got the call that they were going national? It was all during that drastic change in our world where people said, oh my gosh, maybe she's on to something. And it made me disappointed that it took something very, very hard for people to realize they need hope. But I'm also like, that's a unique time to double down on hope and say, okay, we're bringing it. And that's what we do. And so I got the call and then in 2020, and then we launched January 6th, 2021. And I say that date because some people might remember that date. It was a very interesting date for our nation, but it was also one of those moments of, I got phone calls and they're like, Whitney, we're so sorry that this is the day you're launching nationally. I said, guys, this is why I do the show I do, connecting people and letting them know like there's weird situations that happen, but we're better together. We can learn from each other. And so it was really just like affirmation of like stepping into being a mission-based show and being my best yes to myself. Like I didn't need the affirmation. I mean, I needed the kind of the yes to be on TV, but as long as I had the yes for myself, I knew the vision.
That's fantastic. Tell us really quickly, what does a normal day look like?
You know, it all depends in what kind of, I break it into taping season and non-taping season, but we're always kind of taping. So there's never like, there's a NASCAR race happening in Chicago and one of the drivers is coming in. Well, technically we're wrapped by that time, but I'll still tape with them because we're able to like add them in. So it all depends on what type of, like if you look at my calendar, it's almost like divided into taping season and not. But what I love about now understanding the back end of a national show, we're playing offense for the first time. So instead of always being up against deadlines, I'm understanding and going back to my business mentor, what needs to get done today? You know, you don't have to know your sponsors for the fall until you have to turn in that show. So that can literally be a hard deadline right before, you know, and like it's kind of understanding that. Well, I really wanted to start going long form with my storytelling. So we realized that a lot of the people that are coming on the show had these amazing life-changing stories, but they're flying in from everywhere. We had a guy fly in from Australia. And, you know, with that, how do we go long form and layer their story in almost a 60 minutes type way where you can have other people interject and add beauty into their story and beautiful video, and all that takes more time. So that's where I am approaching that part of my day. So like what's happening now is I do my ins and outs coming up in the 1st of June, which means I say hello and welcome to the show for all my fall season. And we already have all those lined up, but we needed all those taped. And then coming up, I'll be starting to go in and really executive produce. So like for the last 2 months, I would say I've been the CEO and the host because we've been working on sponsorships and then I've been, you know, interviewing. But coming up, I'll be executive producing. And so it all depends like kind of where we're at with the calendar. But I'm so excited because our team is really understanding this offense approach and they're understanding that like, oh, this is when we should be getting everybody prepped for the fall season with events. And, you know, this last season is the first time that I've ever embargoed my shows. And that took a learning curve.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
I'll tell you, because I'm really proud of ourselves that we finally figured it out. We would have people in our studio and they would be taking pictures and videos and so excited about they were being on the show. And then when it hit 4 months later, actually on TV, crickets. They wouldn't be talking about it hitting TV. Well, what's the product? The product is it hitting TV. So now we have made everybody that comes on the show, they're embargoed. Their embargo lifts a week before the show. So that's when they can finally announce that they're coming on the show. And it's really worked in our favor. This season is our first season we've done it. But again, it's the learning curve. It's like understanding what works. And it worked for us.
That's
okay. So that's interesting. I have a question. So when you say you're going to do your intros to all your shows, do you prepare your outfits ahead of time? And do you do a different outfit for each show? And do you think about, okay, my guest is this person, so my intro is going to be this? Like, how does your mind work for that?
Yeah, so that's part of why I brought that up is this has been another, we used to do a show in 1 month and it would be all buttoned up, but then you realize, okay, these topics are all powerful topics, but this person actually might fit in that topic better whenever you start seeing the lineup, or it might be you have to look culturally at the person and understand what they're coming on for. And it might be a really offensive thing to maybe have one person with this other person right next to it. So that's like another thing we have to look at of the values of what they're coming on for too. We have to make sure that we're delicate with where we're placing people. So that I used to tape ins and outs earlier on. And what I've realized is it's really great once everything is done and we do a final like above glance at the season and we say, okay, now it's time for the ins and outs. And actually, I have a script writer this season that is coming in and helping me navigate some fresh ideas for the intros and outros. I also invested in a new teleprompter because as great as I think I am at talking, you could see a little like Whitney thinking. And of course, this is just me being hard on myself, but every season we do a postmortem of what we can do better. And we saw my eyes looking like I was kind of thinking and not really connecting with the viewers as much. And that's where this season, everything will be in there ahead of time and approved, which is really great. So I'm really excited. And then our clothing, yes, everything is picked out per show. But again, if something changes, it's just making sure we have that consistency on all the ins and outs as well.
Oh,
And if it's fall intros, you don't want to go showing up in a summer dress.
Well, that's a great point, but it really is not that important for our show because of the 3-year runtime. Because
got it. Okay.
Reruns, yes. So when they kick into reruns, it definitely could be in the fall and spring. So I try to stay more neutral. And this season, I went in and I worked with LaFleur, and they were great because they gave me 7 strong outfits that I felt good in and made me feel great as a host, opposed to somebody just dropping off a bunch of outfits saying, here's what I suggest for you. I got to actually go in and pick out what made me feel good. And that's been really nice. And then I keep them until the end of season. And then yeah.
So I would say attention to detail is one of your strong suits.
It hasn't always been. That is something I've been working on. So, you can get really overwhelmed with the details. And that's what's crazy is if my daughter really wanted to take over the Whitney Reynolds show one day, I know the whole back end of launching a national TV show, which I just feel like is so much knowledge, but it took me 15 years to get here. And so it's a very interesting thing to know what we know, but now it's all about playing offense and the details do matter. And I'm finally in a place where I can afford to bring in some experts that are very good at what they do. And then we can drive a stronger, car together.
Well, the future looks great. We have to ask one last question before we get into the nonprofit, because we could talk to you for hours. What's your superpower?
I believe, that's a great question about superpower because I think it is resilience. It is being a believer of here on purpose and being resilient with what's come my way. And, even I know twins are such a blessing, but like even whenever I found out I'm super type A and I found out I was they had a lot of fun with me in that ultrasound. They said, there's baby A. And I'm like, oh, yay. And they're like, and there's baby B. And I'm like, what? And, it's just being resilient with what does come my way and being the best version that I can of what has come my way and taking that and running with it. And so, I would say, some of them have been hard resiliency and some of it's like resilient of like, I love being a twin mom and I wouldn't have it any other way now, but it was a learning curve. And so, and my husband's one of my greatest gifts ever. He is such a yin to my yang and riding a tandem bike together. And sometimes he has to pump the brakes because he's like, okay, we got to redirect. But he has been such a champion of the mission because it's not always easy to be a spouse of someone that is very, very driven. And so I've recognized that too. You know, he gets called Mr. Reynolds all the time. That's not our family's last name. And I'm really proud because some guys could have a big ego about that. And he's really just a fabulous partner. And, you know, we named him a co-partner of the business pretty early on. We had a very fast dating relationship. He proposed at 3 months. We got married within 6 months. And then we waited like 4 years to have kids because we just had fun. But he really helped me dig down to the business side of it because he comes from the sales world and the tech world, the startup world. And he was really part of the success of the business side because I always had the dream, but you can only go so far with the dream. You got to have the business plan behind it. And so he's been a huge part of that.
Well, as you talk about the dot points, connecting the dot points, that's a phenomenal dot point to connect.
Yes.
To connect as well.
Yes, he is my little gift from above. Yeah, he's great. And you know, it's awesome because again, being a strong woman, I'm sure people are listening that they're like, okay, I relate with being strong and being driven and all these things. And it's like also giving thank yous where they're deserved because he is a huge thank you.
Whitney, you are so dynamic. Thank you. This has just been, I feel like we've been together for 5 minutes, but like I have so many more questions and I hope our relationship continues. We get to know more about you. We'll definitely be tuning in. Now we move into our nonprofit. We always ask every guest for a nonprofit spotlight, and you have chosen Together at Peace Foundation, which tell us about that and how you came to this foundation.
Yeah, so Together at Peace is a partner of the Whitney Reynolds Show. And like I told you, it's really important that we have partners that are very mission aligned. And so what I love about Christine Marzullo is she came to me with this idea a few years ago. And at Together at Peace wasn't always a foundation, but she knew after losing her dad that she wanted to keep his memory alive. But how do you do that? Because grief is such an interesting and hard and can change based on the day. But how do you talk about grief with others? And what was crazy is the more I got to talk with her and the more I understood her vision, the more I like scratched my head. And this doesn't happen very often where you see something that's not really out there for people. And what she was creating was there was no hopeful bereavement space. And what the Together at Peace Foundation has done is they remind people, they bring a community together of keeping the light that still shines bright after loss and being a community for people. So she's created anything from templates for walks because, you know, sometimes when people pass away, all they want to do is keep their memory and honor and going. And they're like, I want to do a walk. Well, she's created templates for walks. She also has this beautiful luncheon where she brings people together and it is of stories of remembering and it doesn't have to be a sad thing. The tears might still be flowing, but it is that space that still gives so much life to lives after they are gone. And grief is one thing that we're all going to encounter. You know, cancer is very, very close to, I mean, I haven't met a person that's not impacted by cancer, but grief, we know we've all lost somebody, or we all know someone who's lost somebody, because that's the reality of our life is, you know, we have a beginning and eventually an end. And so I just champion Christine for seeing a gap and filling it. And that's Together at Peace.
Oh, thank you so much. How do people find you?
Okay, I love this because this is a new stage in our life. You can literally just type in my name, Whitney Reynolds, and everything pops up. So you can see how to watch our show. You can find us on social. Like it definitely, it'll even tell you my age. Luckily, not my weight on Wikipedia, but I'm laughing because like literally however you want to find us, it's there. So if you just can remember the 2 words, Whitney and Reynolds, you can find us.
And Whitney is Whitney.
Oh yeah, just like the Queen, Whitney Houston, but I just say It's like Houston and a little Reynolds wrap. Whitney Reynolds. There you go.
Oh,
Whitney, you are just, I don't know. I'd like to wrap you up like a gift and then just bring you around to people like with hope, right? You are just a bolt of sunshine. I have enjoyed every second of this podcast. I'd love to be able to be close to you so I can give you a big giant hug.
Well, we'll have to make that happen. We will have to make that.
I'm in Chicago a lot because, you know, I have my son that lives there, and I do business in Chicago. But you are just fabulous and you keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies.
I ditto. Thank you for being with us. We really, truly, truly appreciate you.
Thanks for having me on.
And Whitney,
Good job.
are you off recording?
Well, I don't know about you, but I just need to go and stand out in the sun and say, "Whoa," because she was just fabulous.
Oh my God, she is like amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And let's go back to what we started in the beginning, distractions, but her superpower is resilience. Like, really? What that young woman at 38 has done in her life and will continue to do and make a difference in this world. I can't wait to watch.
And an incredible, really just her heart for helping. I
Oh
think
my God.
that's really what comes through. So, oh, this one's been a fun one. They're all fun. They really are all fun. We really are so fortunate. And we're so fortunate to have the listeners that we do and the feedback that we get. I'm just grateful. I feel very grateful today.
I feel grateful too, Katie. I do too. That's a good word. That's a good word. Let's leave it at grateful.
We'll leave it at grateful. And we hope that you all are grateful. Please know that you can find more information about our podcast on theviewinyourmirror.com. You'll be able to link to our own personal websites, learn more about us, reach out. We are on social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I think that's it. And
did you say Instagram? You said Instagram.
I think I did.
Well, we have YouTube. We have a YouTube.
Oh, we do. We're not doing much with YouTube, but we do have YouTube.
Well, we have some good stuff on there for people to watch.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll do better about putting more stuff on YouTube as we go along. But we hope that you come at your life with a grateful heart. And we all are unique and different, but we all share so many things in common that we talk about time and time again. And when you look in the mirror, be grateful that you are the best version of you. Until next time.